I would say in the last few years, the wide receiver has been the standout position in the SEC, but I would say in the last, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if you had to pick one position where the SEC has stood out amongst the rest of the nation, it's secondary, specifically at cornerback. We'll talk cornerbacks. Let's do it right now. We've got a top 5 list coming your way. David Waters of Last Word on Sports, and we also have Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, amongst a number of other platforms. David, let's start with you. It's, again, another talented field at cornerback.
That it is, and like you said, it's been that way a while for the SEC now, and it's kind of funny. We were talking about this all summer long. It's kind of been a back and forth between Florida and LSU for who the real DBU is. So that little spat all summer has kind of fed us with some info. So yeah, I'll start with my top 5. Vernon Hargreaves, pretty much everybody can agree on that. There's some people who would put maybe someone else first, but he's 2-time All-SEC his first 2 years. Every accolade out there so far, has been thrown his way. Probably one of the best in the country, not only in the SEC. He really rarely gets thrown at. His numbers are pretty good for the times he gets thrown at. But Cam Sutton, who is my number 2, their numbers are a lot alike from past season. But Hargreaves doesn't really get thrown at often because teams really just don't like the testing. He's a very good tackler as well. I think that's something that gets overlooked. With the screens, he'll have to come up and make a tackle. He'll tackle the running back, if he gets to him. So that's another thing that can be overlooked. But like I said, Cam Sutton's my number 2 from Tennessee, the junior there, tied with Hargreaves for 13 pass breakups last year in 13 games. Finished 3rd also with 16 passes defended. Has gotten better every year since he got there. He shed the 3-star mold that he came in with to become one of the SEC's best. Jonathan Jones at Auburn, senior there, returning leader in interceptions in the SEC, will benefit, I think, greatly will benefit from Muschamp and Tavares Robinson coming over from Florida. We know those guys know how to coach up DBs, and they're already walking into a situation where they have one of the SEC's best. So there's an even better chance for him to make more explosive plays, taking over from Muschamp and Robinson. Tre'Davious White, LSU, my number 4, a very versatile corner. LSU, he picks up, where everybody else from LSU has been. He's a returning starter. He'll be counted on to lock down, his side of the field as he's kind of the, one of the guys they can just really count on. They struggled at times beginning of the season last year, but he knows how to lock down his side of the field. And then 5th, I got Cyrus Jones, Alabama, second team All-SEC. He struggled late in the year a little bit, but he's, one of the best cover corners in the SEC. A really tough player that will have to carry the Bama secondary until they get more experience at safety. But how does he bounce back, from missing spring with a hip injury? I think is the question for him.
So, David, you bring up one point about statistics, and we go through these top 5 lists at each position, and I think that's the first thing you need to do. And what is typically done is we look at the stats, and then we try to interpret them and put them into context and what they really mean. So you can't just go stats, but then you have to break it down and see what it really means. But offensive linemen know real individual stats, and I think the next position where the stats can be very misleading in the secondary, and specifically a cornerback, depending on how much they're thrown at, the scheme of the defense, how many tackles they're going to get, depending on what's expected to them, especially when we talk about the safety position. So got to keep that in mind in regards to stats, and Hargreaves considered generally the best. All right, Stephen M., top 5 in the SEC at corner. What you got?
Number one, I'm marked for my top 5 cornerbacks in the Southeastern Conference. I, too, have Vernon Hargreaves. And aside from the game against Alabama last season where he was placed up against Amari Cooper, struggled that game. But aside from that, Vernon Hargreaves, the best cover corner in the Southeastern Conference because of his ability not just to attack the football, but take direct angles as he's pursuing the football. Something about good cornerback play is to not just be physical and attack the football, but it's about taking angles, making the right hits, making the right calls on the field. and it's something that Vernon Hargreaves continues to impress and get better on at Florida. Number 2, I also have Cam Sutton out of Tennessee. Butch Jones has done a phenomenal job of stockpiling talent, and Cam Sutton at that secondary for the Volunteers, a hard hitter, needs to be able to continue improving on taking away the inside from a lot of these physical, bigger receivers. But as far as playing the football, as far as having that technique, shielding receivers toward the sideline, using that out of bounds as a second defender, Cam Sutton ideal at doing that very, very well. Number 3, I have Cyrus Jones, Alabama cornerback, coming into his senior year this season. I know David mentioned Cyrus Jones struggled a bit last year early on. A little tidbit about Cyrus Jones: when he came into Alabama in 2012, he was brought in as a slot receiver. So he didn't really get his first true taste of playing corner until 2013. His first assignment was 6'6" Mike Evans, Texas A&M. Talk about welcome to the world, Cyrus Jones. You pull Mike Evans. And so he learned from that, grew from that, and then, of course, last season, Landon Collins took Cyrus Jones and Geno Smith both under his wing. Cyrus, 46 tackles last year, finished 10th on the team, a team high 13 pass breakups. He tied for the team lead in interceptions with 3, and he did all of this playing in 14 games last season despite sustaining a torn labrum in his hip. Cyrus did not play in spring ball, did not participate in spring, but he's been in the weight room, in the film room. He was cleared to participate in the summer conditioning program, so he is in that for the Crimson Tide. But Cyrus Jones will be looked upon to take on a huge leadership role in the absence of Landon Collins, Nick Perry, and Jarek Williams. At number 4, I have Tre'Davious White from the Louisiana State Tigers. Even with the loss of John Chavis, Tre'Davious White is a very sound corner. Yes, you have Jalen Mills, back there as well, but Tre'Davious White, a sound player. He's much more of a hard hitter than people give him credit for. He loves to lay the wood as well as being an opportunist when it comes to finding the football. And number 5, I got a little change it for you. Will Redmond, Mississippi State. Watch him this year. Mississippi State, it lost Jamerson Love last year. Yes, it returns Tavez Calhoun, but Will Redmond is a blue-collar player, a hard-nosed corner, a hard-nosed hitter, and a guy that loves to high point the football. So I have Vernon Hargreaves, Cam Sutton, Cyrus Jones, number 3, Tre'Davious White at 4, and at number 5, the Mo Bulldogs, Will Redmond.
Yeah, Stephen, and you bring up Will Redmond, and I saw from a few sources over the last couple of weeks that he is moving himself up NFL draft boards rather quickly, and of course this final season is going to be big for him. All right, I don't think we have too much dissension here other than the Redmond pick at number 5. Here's my top 5. We'll count them out from number 5. I've got the senior Cyrus Jones from Alabama at number 5. Second team All-SEC, 42 tackles, 3 picks, 13 pass breakups. That was second in the conference. He's 5'10". I've heard him make comments that because of his lack of size and stature, that has caused him to play more physical. So he's taken that on as a challenge to be a more physical corner because he doesn't have the frame to match up physically with the eye test with some of the best wide receivers in the SEC. But he played really well. If you go down some of the better matchups that he had this past season, Runaway Wilson of Mississippi State shut him down, a big 6'5" guy, Malachi Dupree with NFL-type size, and also Laquan Treadwell. Cyrus Jones afforded himself very well in those matchups. Converted wide receiver, Nick Saban has said he is definitely the best cover corner that we have, and when Nick Saban definitely makes a statement to say this guy is for sure the best we have, that definitely says something. At number 4, I'm going with the sophomore Cam Sutton out of Tennessee, 37 interceptions. He tied as well with a couple guys second in the conference in pass breakups. He had 3 picks. He was just a 3-star, as I believe David mentioned, coming out of high school, but immediately broke onto the scene and was a first-team All-Freshman, All-American, a film junkie, determined player. shutdown kind of guy, shutdown Laquan Treadwell. So if you go back to the Ole Miss game, even though Tennessee got routed in Oxford, Treadwell had 3 receptions against zone coverage. He did absolutely nothing when Sutton was on him. He did struggle against Amari Cooper, 9 receptions, 2 touchdowns, but who didn't? And the pass rush at Tennessee should be much better with some maturing players up front this season at Tennessee. All right, Jonathan Jones from Auburn. I've got the senior at number 3. He had 36 tackles, 11 pass breakups, 6 interceptions, 6 picks, and 4 were in the end zone to stop scoring drives. Second team All-SEC. He was just a 3-star coming out of high school. The Auburn pass rush, minus D Ford from the season before, minus Carl Lawson, who was injured early, really hurt guys like Jonathan Jones in the back end. Foot injury coming off a stress fracture that really compromised his time on the field early in the season. It still bothered him in the spring. He had surgery, but he should be okay coming up this fall. Tre'Davious White of LSU, I really like him. I think LSU has the best secondary in 2015 in college football. I think they're going to be amazing. You're going to hear me talk more LSU when we talk safeties. The Tigers only gave up 162 yards through the air per game last season. This kid had 6 pass breakups, 2 picks. He's from the same town as Morris Claiborne. They really, Claiborne, it was a situation where he really fostered the maturity aspect and the football development of Tre'Davious White. He's kind of his god brother. And Rashard Robinson was a maturing player, a guy that was really coming into his own at LSU as one of the best cover corners. He was kicked off the team, re-enrolled at LSU, and should be back in 2016. And then the suspense, not so much. Vernon Hargreaves at number 1. David talked about the run support that we sometimes overlook, but I think it's maybe one of the reasons why Deion Sanders is probably not the best cornerback of all time, despite being the best cover corner of all time. That Hargreaves he'll put his nose in there, even at 5'11", 195. So he's got decent size for a corner, but in terms of the guys that he has to meet on the field physically, he still will support the run. He had 50 tackles. Guys don't throw at him, so that compromises his pass defense statistics, although he did pick off 3 passes. This kid was a first-team All-American from his freshman year on. The Amari Cooper game, I would love to break down the film. I'm guessing that has something to do with Alabama's offensive line and Blake Sims' mobility, as well as that being a difficult one-on-one matchup. We all know that for defensive backs to hang with wide receivers, even the best cornerbacks in the NFL and college football can only be expected to do that for so long. He's got natural ability, as David could attest to, much better than I could, and he's combined that with making himself a very skilled player. So his technique is extremely sound, so he's matched the two. And when somebody's that talented and they do the work to work on their skills and their technique, then that makes for, in this case, a All-American. So Hargreaves at 1, White at 2, Jones at 3, Sutton at 4, and Cyrus Jones at 5. And I think that's in a little bit different order than everybody else had, with a wild card from Stephen M. on Will Redmond. So is there anyone that you guys have possibly off the radar, or with your particular teams in camp at Florida or at Alabama, even if we don't hear from them this season, that you're excited to see them play either this fall or in 2016? Stephen M., I'll start with you.
I'm very excited this season to see Tony Brown, the former 5-star prospect from Beaumont, Texas. This is a guy at 6 feet, roughly 200 pounds, playing opposite Cyrus Jones this year at the other corner position. Tony Brown, a guy that loves to be physical, has size, loves to jam at the line of scrimmage, can play on an island against some of the best in the SEC because he has the range. Is in the film room. He's an absolute film study junkie. Loves to kickbox and build his strength, and been working all off season on honing in on the recovery speed, the top end speed, being physical, playing the ball, facing the ball as you're playing it. Tony Brown got in some games last year, 13 games to be exact, with 2 starts last season, recorded 10 tackles, with 7 of those being stonewall stops and a pass breakup. Very, very excited to see Tony Brown on the field more this year.
David, at Florida, has there anybody been recruited, signed in the last couple of years that we can look out for?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start first with Jalen Tabor. He was a freshman All-American, freshman All-SEC last year. Most people probably remember that play, the one-handed interception at Vanderbilt in the end zone last year to save a touchdown. It was all, ESPN top 10 play. He reaches up with one hand and takes it down. Probably going to be the starter opposite Vernon Hargreaves. So, that's a sophomore, you're looking at there getting that. So, and also I'd like to throw Brian Poole in there. He's a nickelback for Florida. He often gets overlooked, playing with Hargreaves and company. But he would be, tops at other schools. He'd be starting other places as well. He gets moved around a lot, so he's very versatile, and he plays, like I say, he plays the nickel. He gets to stick with those most shiftier wide receivers, in the slot. And he actually led the Gators with interceptions last year.
All right, gentlemen, we've nailed down the cornerback position. Let's circle back and talk some safeties. Appreciate the insight and the information.
Thanks.